Loneliness is something that many of us experience, and Natsuki Subaru is no exception. Thrown into an unfamiliar world with nothing but a bit of food and the clothes on his back, he has no one to rely on and nowhere to turn. He was utterly alone until he met Emilia. The bonds he built with her and the people at the Roswaal manor became his anchor in a world that felt so overwhelming and foreign, yet returned by death. A cursed ability tied to the Witch of Envy has the ability to take it all away. Every reset erases the connections he worked so hard to build, leaving him as the only one who remembers. After rescuing Emilia and retrieving the stolen insignia, Subaru could have chosen a life of leisure. Instead, he decided to work as a butler for the Roswaal manor, despite not being very good at it. His clumsy attempts at cooking and trimming the foliage made him the target of Rem and Rom's teasing, yet this teasing became a bridge that connected him to them. While his initial motivation for staying at the manor was to grow closer to Emilia, the bonds he formed with Rem and Rom provided him with a sense of familiarity and belonging, something he lacked since being isekai'd into this unfamiliar world. However, just as he promised Emilia on a date, he woke up to find himself back at the start of his time at the mansion. When Subaru woke up, the playful teasing of Rem and Rom was gone, replaced by wary suspicion. The trust he has earned now existed only in his memories, as if it has never happened in the first place. Roswaal's suspicion of Subaru was ruled to be very unlikely, with Rom believing he is too useless to be a spy. But whatever progress he made vanished when he woke up at the beginning once more. Returned by death grants Subaru the power to change fate, but at the cost of isolation. The teasing and trust and promises he shared were erased, dissolved into smoke, leaving him to start over in an attempt to rebuild those relationships. This time, his second attempt played out much like the first. He requested to be a butler at the Roswaal mansion and remained a hazard in the kitchen. But this time, he grew closer to Rem and Rom. Unable to read or write the language of this world, Rom decided to teach Subaru. She claimed it was just to make her life easier, so that he could take orders and run errands. Yet, she trusted him enough to fall asleep in his room, though Rem insisted it was just to stimulate him to do better. Subaru learned this from Rem while running errands at a nearby village. On the way back, Subaru learns about Rem's thoughts, insecurities, and how much she looks up to her sister. To Subaru, Rom seems like the inferior version, but Rem longed to be like her sister, strong-willed and self-assured. These moments of vulnerability and trust gave Subaru a sense of belonging. However, later that night, as he drifted off to sleep, excited for his planned date with Emilia, he awoke moments later in agony, suffocating to death. And just like that, he's back where it all began. While Subaru doesn't show it in the earlier loops, the time he spent with Rem and Rom, time that only he can remember, began to take a toll. He pretends like nothing is wrong, throwing himself into work to distract himself from the painful memories and trauma that he has experienced. But no matter how much he tries to suppress it, the weight of being the only one who remembers slowly crushes him. Determined to uncover the identity of the unknown attacker on the fourth night, Subaru changes his approach. Instead of working as a butler, he chooses to stay at the Roswaal manor as a guest to gather information and find out who this supposed attacker is. Subaru quickly realizes that he struggles to make the same connections with Rem and Rom as he did when he worked as a butler. Without him injuring himself at any task he performs while working as a butler, the connections he built with them could never form. He built those connections because he was a disaster at chores. Rem's quiet smiles felt polite rather than warm, and Rom's sharp remarks lacked the fondness hidden under her teasing. He was no longer the clumsy coworker. He was just an outsider. a guest of the manor. But worse than these emotional distance was the suspicion that now loomed over him. Every time Subaru resets, the scent of the Witch of Envy surrounds him, unnoticed by most, but impossible to ignore for those who are sensitive to it. Roswaal, already wary of him in previous loops, now finds Subaru's decision to remain as a guest even more suspicious. Before, his incompetence as a butler was what made him easy to dismiss as harmless. But now, without any responsibilities to justify his presence, his motives were questioned. Deemed a threat, Subaru found himself at the mercy of Rem, who painfully interrogated him before swiftly eliminating him, bringing him back to the beginning once again. Returned by Death forces Subaru to experience a cruel paradox. The more he builds genuine connections, the more devastating it becomes when those connections are severed. He's a living archive of forgotten timelines, forced to bear the weight of the memories that only he can remember. Each reset isolates him further. The joy he experienced became a source of profound loneliness, a constant reminder that he is alone in the understanding of their shared past. No matter how many times he starts over, the people he grows to care for will never truly know the struggles he endures. To them, each new loop is their first encounter, while for Subaru, it is just another attempt at rebuilding something he has already lost. He is constantly forced to rebuild relationships that vanish with every death, leaving him stranded in an endless cycle of grief that only can be ended by him solving the mystery that forces him to continue to reset. Yet, despite this pain, Subaru refuses to give in to the despair. Even if he must start over 100 times, he will continue to fight for a day when those connections will no longer have to be rewritten.